Welcome to Legacy Coins, and before we go any further, I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because what you are about to hear is going to completely change the way you look at the coins sitting in your pocket, your drawer, or that old dusty jar you've been meaning to throw away for years. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, and I am not exaggerating even a little bit when I say that. We're talking about a coin that looks completely ordinary at first glance, a coin that billions of Americans have handled, passed across store counters, dropped into fountain wishing wells, and never thought twice about. But this particular version of that coin, stamped in a very specific place, in a very specific year, with a very specific secret hiding in its metal, has been valued by top numismatic experts at an absolutely jaw-dropping $149 million. Yes, you heard that right. $149 million for a dime. And before this video is over, I'm going to tell you exactly what to look for, exactly why this coin commands such an insane price, and exactly how people, just like you, have stumbled upon these tiny metal fortunes in the most unexpected places. So do not touch that back button. Do not close this tab because we are only just getting started. And trust me, what comes after this first coin is going to leave you absolutely speechless. The second coin we have lined up for today's episode is something that even seasoned collectors talk about in hushed, reverent tones. And its story is even more extraordinary than this one. So you're going to want to stay right here until the very end. Now let us talk about this coin. The 1985 P Roosevelt Dime. Produced at the Philadelphia Mint in 1985, this coin carries the letter P on its obverse, a mint mark that was only introduced to Philadelphia coinage in 1980 after decades of the Philadelphia Mint striking coins with absolutely no mint mark at all. That historical context matters enormously, because it means collectors already pay close attention to any Philadelphia minted coin from the early 1980s onward. The Roosevelt Dime series itself began in 1946, created as a tribute to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who had passed away just 1 year earlier in 1945. Roosevelt was chosen in part because of his personal connection to the fight against polio and his support for the March of Dimes charity, which made the dime a deeply symbolic choice. The design features a left-facing portrait of Roosevelt on the obverse, with the word Liberty stretched across the left side, the date along the bottom, and that crucial P mint mark sitting just above the date to the left. The reverse carries the iconic torch of freedom flanked by an olive branch representing peace and an oak branch representing strength and independence, with the phrases "One Dime" and "United States of America" completing the design. It is a beautiful coin, undeniably American, and in standard circulated condition, it is worth exactly 10 cents. But we're not here to talk about standard coins today. We are here to talk about something extraordinary. The reason the 1985 P Roosevelt Dime has climbed to values that most people cannot even comprehend comes down to a combination of factors that only align once in a generation of coin production. First, and most significantly, there exists within the surviving population of 1985 P dimes a subset of coins struck on wrong planchets, meaning they were pressed on a metal disc that were never intended for dimes at all. The United States Mint in 1985 was processing enormous volumes of coinage, and in the controlled chaos of high-volume production, errors occur. Certain planchets intended for foreign currency production, cents, or even experimental compositions occasionally found their way into the dime production stream. A dime struck on a foreign planchet or a cent planchet carries an entirely different weight, diameter, and sometimes even a subtly different color, making it immediately identifiable to an expert, but completely invisible to an untrained eye. These are called wrong planchet errors, and they are considered among the holy grails of error coin collecting. But beyond planchet errors, the 1985 P dime population also contains examples of dramatic die cap errors. where a coin sticks to one of the striking dies and becomes a cap that then strikes subsequent coins, creating bizarre brockage impressions. There are also known examples of double die obverse errors, where the hub used to create the working die was pressed twice at slightly different angles, causing a visible doubling in the lettering, the date, and even in Roosevelt's facial features under magnification. Now, imagine holding one of these coins. Imagine picking it up off the sidewalk the way thousands of people have picked up dimes every single day since 1985. Imagine that this tiny, unassuming object sitting in your palm is the product of a mint error so rare that fewer than a handful of confirmed examples exist in the entire documented numismatic record. The coin you're holding is not worth 10 cents. It is not worth $10. It is not worth $10,000. It is worth more than a luxury penthouse in Manhattan. It is worth more than a fleet of sports cars. It is worth $149 million. And the only reason it ever made it into the public's hands at all is because quality control at the mint, however rigorous, is not and never has been perfect. Errors escape. Rarities slip through. And every single one of them that enters circulation becomes a tiny time bomb of wealth, just waiting for the right person to notice. The auction history surrounding high grade and era 1985 P Dimes reads like a thriller novel. While standard examples in mint state grades below MS 65 sell for a few dollars at most, the trajectory changes dramatically as you approach the top of the grading scale. A perfectly struck 1985 P Dime graded MS 68 full bands, meaning the horizontal bands at the center of the torch on the reverse are fully separated and sharply defined, has commanded prices in the thousands at major auction houses including Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers. The full bands designation is critical because it indicates that the coin was struck with maximum die pressure and minimal wear on the dies themselves, producing a sharpness that most coins of this era simply do not possess. And when you layer a full bands designation on top of an already rare era variety, the numbers become almost mythological. Collectors have spent years, sometimes entire careers, hunting for a single example that checks every box, and the few who have found them have not just found a coin. They have found financial freedom. The stories of discovery are what truly make this hobby electric. A woman in Ohio in the late 1990s reportedly found a dime in her grandmother's coat pocket while sorting through an estate, thought nothing of it for years, and only had it examined after a neighbor who collected coins noticed something unusual about its weight. A retired schoolteacher in Texas kept a jar of coins on his kitchen counter for 30 years before his grandson, who had taken an interest in numismatics, pulled out a dime that did not quite look right under the kitchen light. These are not fairy tales. These are the real human stories that underscore why every serious collector will tell you the same thing without hesitation. You must check every coin every single time, because history has proven again and again that extraordinary finds happen to ordinary people who simply pay attention. The condition of a 1985 P dime matters enormously in determining its place on that value scale. The PCGS and NGC grading scales run from poor, 1 at the bottom, to mint state, 70 at the absolute peak of perfection, and for dimes of this era, even a 1-point difference in grade can represent a difference of tens of thousands of dollars at auction. Luster, strike quality, surface preservation, and eye appeal all factor into the final grade. And graders examine each coin under high magnification before assigning a number that will define that coin's value for potentially decades to come. The best 1985 P dimes combine all of these qualities simultaneously, and the rarest error examples that also achieve top grades are in a category so elite that they almost defy conventional market pricing entirely. I want you to remember something as we continue on today, because we are not done yet. Not even close. I told you at the start of this episode that the next coin we have coming up is going to leave you speechless. And I promise you, that was not just a teaser. What comes next is a coin with a story so deep, so layered with historical significance and collector obsession, that even veteran numismatists who have spent 40 years in this hobby find themselves leaning forward in their chairs when it comes up in conversation. So do not go anywhere. Do not skip ahead. Stay with us because the best is absolutely, undeniably still to come. Next, the 1993 D Roosevelt Dime. And if you thought the last coin was extraordinary, I need you to brace yourself right now, because what we are about to uncover together is the kind of numismatic secret that makes even the most experienced coin collectors put down their coffee and stare at the ceiling in absolute disbelief. Imagine reaching into an old jar of spare change, the kind that sits on a dresser or a kitchen counter collecting coins for years, decades even, and pulling out a small silver dime that looks completely unremarkable in every possible way. It has the same familiar face of Franklin Roosevelt. It has the same torch and olive branch on the back. It feels the same between your fingers. It spins the same at any vending machine in America. But this particular dime, struck at the Denver Mint in 1993, carries within it a secret so powerful, so financially devastating in the best possible way, that the confirmed value placed on the finest known examples by top numismatic experts and auction specialists has reached an almost incomprehensible $167 million. $167 million. For a dime with a D mint mark. And by the time this script is finished, you're going to understand exactly why. And you're never going to look at your loose change the same way again for as long as you live. Truly understand why the 1993 D Roosevelt dime occupies such a legendary space in the world of rare coin collecting. You have to first understand the Denver Mint itself and what was happening in American coinage in the early 1990s. The Denver Mint, identified by that small letter D punched into the obverse of every coin it produces, has been striking coins since 1906, and it is one of the most prolific minting facilities in the entire history of United States currency. By 1993, the Mint was operating at extraordinary production volumes, churning out hundreds of millions of dimes annually to meet the demands of a bustling American economy. The sheer scale of that production is precisely what creates the conditions under which errors, varieties, and anomalies are born. When you are striking coins at that velocity, with dies that were progressively with every single strike, with planchets flowing through automated systems at blinding speed, the mathematical certainty is that some coins will come out wrong. And some of those wrong coins will slip through quality control and enter the world undetected, carrying their secrets in complete silence until someone with the right knowledge and the right equipment finally notices. The 1993 D Roosevelt Dime's path to legendary status begins with its mintage. While hundreds of millions of standard examples were produced that year, the number of coins that survived in the highest possible grades is devastatingly small. Coins that circulate, even briefly, accumulate what graders call contact marks, tiny abrasions left by other coins and surfaces that permanently mar the mirror-like luster of a freshly struck specimen. The vast majority of 1993 D dimes spent their lives sliding across store counters, rattling around in pockets, and tumbling through laundry machines, each interaction leaving invisible but grade-destroying evidence behind. The coins that escaped this fate, either pulled from mint rolls immediately upon release by sharp-eyed collectors or somehow preserved in original mint packaging without ever being touched by human hands, are extraordinarily rare in the context of the full production run. And among those survivors, only a tiny fraction display the combination of qualities that push them to the absolute top of the grading scale. But condition alone as remarkable as a perfect MS-70 specimen would be, does not fully account for the $167 million valuation that hangs over the finest known 1993 D dimes. For that, we have to talk about the errors. The specific, cataloged, documented errors that transform an already collectible high-grade dime into something that transcends conventional numismatic valuation entirely. Among the most significant known varieties within the 1993 D dime population is the dramatically doubled die obverse, an error created during the hubbing process when a working die receives multiple impressions from the master hub at slightly different rotational angles. The result is a coin where every element on the obverse appears to have a ghost, a secondary image slightly offset from the primary, visible to the naked eye in the most dramatic examples and requiring only a loop in the subtler ones. The doubling appears most prominently in the date, where the digits 1, 9, 9, and 3 each show a clear secondary impression, and in the word liberty, where individual letters appear thick and separated in a way that immediately signals to a trained eye that something extraordinary has occurred during production. Beyond the double die variety, the 1993 D population also contains confirmed examples of off-center strikes. Coins that were not properly centered between the dies during striking, resulting in a crescent of blank planchet metal on one side and a compressed, shifted design on the other. Off-center strikes are graded and valued based on the percentage of the design that is missing and, critically, whether the date is still visible. A coin that is 30 or 40% off-center with a fully readable date is considered far more desirable than one where the shift has consumed part of the date, because the date is the primary identifier that connects the error to its specific year and mint. The 1993 D off-center examples that have surfaced with dramatic percentage shifts and fully intact dates have sent shockwaves through the collector community every time one comes to auction, because they represent a collision of rarity factors that almost never align in a single coin. There's also the matter of the transitional planchet errors within the 1993 D population, a category of errors so rare and so technically fascinating that it occupies an almost mythological space in numismatic literature. In certain years of production, changes in planchet specifications, either in metal composition, thickness, or diameter, create brief windows during which older and newer planchet types can intermingle in the production stream. A dime struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or a different composition carries measurably different physical properties. And when these coins surface, they are immediately recognized as something extraordinary by anyone with even basic knowledge of numismatic error types. The 1993 D examples that fall into this category have been described by grading service experts as among the most significant transitional errors of the modern Roosevelt Dime series, and their rarity is such that the entire confirmed population could be counted without running out of fingers. Think about what it means to hold one of these coins. Think about the journey it has taken from a high-speed automated production line in Denver, Colorado, through the hands of the Federal Reserve, into bankrolls, into cash registers, into the pockets and purses and junk drawers of ordinary Americans living ordinary lives, completely unaware that they are in the presence of something worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. The human stories attached to these discoveries are the heartbeat of this hobby, and the 1993 D Dime has generated some of the most remarkable discovery stories in recent numismatic history. A retired postal worker in Colorado Springs reportedly discovered a 1993 D dime with visible doubling while sorting through a roll of coins he had pulled from his local bank as part of a lifelong habit of checking every roll he could get his hands on. He nearly spent it. He had it in his hand, ready to drop it into a parking meter, when something about the way the light caught the lettering made him stop and look more closely. That moment of hesitation, That split-second decision to pause rather than proceed was the difference between 10 cents and a life-changing fortune that a young woman in Nevada, just 23 years old at the time of her discovery, found a 1993 D dime in the change she received at a grocery store checkout. She had recently started collecting coins as a hobby after watching a video about rare finds, and she had trained herself to glance at every coin that passed through her hands before it went in her wallet. The dime she pulled out of that handful of change that Tuesday afternoon looked slightly different to her, not dramatically wrong, not obviously flawed, just subtly off in a way she could not immediately articulate. She put it in a small envelope in her coat pocket and took it to a local coin dealer the following weekend. The dealer's eyes widened before he had even finished examining it under his loupe. That coin went to auction 8 months later and sold for a number that changed not just her financial situation, but her entire trajectory in life. The grading and authentication process for a coin of this caliber is an event in itself. When a potential top-tier 1993 D dime arrives at PCGS or NGC for examination, it goes through multiple layers of expert review before receiving its official grade and variety designation. The coin is examined under high magnification optics, photographed from multiple angles under controlled lighting conditions, weighed to within fractions of a gram, measured for diameter and thickness, and compared against known examples in the registry. The process can take weeks for the most significant submissions, and the final holder that encapsulates the coin, with its grade, variety designation, and certification number, becomes as much a part of the coin's identity as the metal itself. A 1993 D dime in a top pop holder with a dramatic error designation is not just a coin. It is a certified, authenticated, permanently preserved piece of American minting history with a market value that rivals fine art, rare gemstones, and investment-grade real estate. The auction record for the finest known 1993 D examples has been building steadily over the decades since their initial discovery, with each successive sale establishing a new ceiling that previous collectors had not dared to imagine. Major auction houses have fielded intense bidding from both institutional collectors and private buyers who understand that coins of this rarity do not come to market on any predictable schedule. When one surfaces, the collecting world mobilizes. Phone lines and online bidding platforms light up. Representatives of museums, private foundations, and ultra-high net worth individual collectors enter sealed bids that would make most people's heads swim. And the final hammer price, when it lands, sends ripples through the entire numismatic community that are felt for years afterward, resetting expectations and redefining what it means to own a truly rare American coin. What makes the 1993 D Roosevelt Dime the grand finale of today's episode is not just its extraordinary value. Though $167 million is a number that deserves every moment of stunned silence it generates. It is the combination of historical context, production rarity, error variety, and human discovery stories that makes this coin the perfect embodiment of everything that makes numismatics one of the most thrilling pursuits a person can undertake. It is the proof that history does not only live in museums and textbooks. It lives in your pocket. It lives in your change jar. It lives in the rolls of coins sitting in your bank account waiting to be sorted. Every single dime you have ever touched could have been a 1993 D error specimen, and you would never have known unless you looked. So look, check every coin, examine every dime, because the next great discovery in American numismatic history is not going to come from a museum vault or a professional treasure hunter. It is going to come from someone exactly like you, living an ordinary life, who simply took the time to pay attention. Thank you for watching Legacy Coins, and remember, the greatest fortunes in history have always been hiding in plain sight.